What's up, guys? It's a new year's 2020, and truthfully, I need a new camera. So it's been on my mind recently, about what kind of camera I need for newer projects. I recently just upgraded my computer, so I'm finally in the space now where I can work with raw footage, ProRes, 4K, 6K. For a long time, I had an iMac, a pretty standard iMac 2013. Pushing ProRes on this thing was probably the most it could actually push out. 4K raw, it wasn't going to get done on this machine unless I took the proxies route, and making proxies for all kinds of contents and then swapping it out just didn't seem suitable for me. It was very time consuming, so I upgraded my PC, and I think I'll do a video on that, on how to upgrade your PC for 4K, 6K, ProRes Raw, all those different codecs moving forward. So now I'm really in a position to decide what kind of camera fits my workflow for 2020. I think it's important for anyone that wants to go ahead and buy a new camera or rent a new camera or have a daily driver. I think it's important to understand your project workflow. You want to really consider what your project is, the workflow, and what type of codec, output, anything that you want to consider going into this project. Example, if I'm gonna shoot a feature, let's say maybe 15 days, not Tyler Perry, 15 at least, not 5. Not 5 days. Not 5 days to shoot a feature. But if I'm going to shoot a feature, I really want my camera workflow to fit our timetable. And I would really consider what kind of camera I would want to bring to set and what it is that we're actually doing. So in short, I really wouldn't bring maybe a Sony camera into this atmosphere because, I want to be where I can cycle through the menus really quickly or set up a lot of custom functions. So I may go with a Blackmagic, I may go with an Ursa, or I may go with a Red or an Ari. So some of those things are the things that you want to consider. If you're filming something that's probably just going to live on the web, you're probably okay with skipping, the passes of shooting either in 4K, 6K, or even RAW. But for something that's going to live on the web, 9 times out of 10, I'm not shooting RAW unless this is going to be an extremely well-paying client to shoot RAW for something to live on the web. So outside of YouTube or anything like that, I wouldn't shoot RAW. Circling back into my points, I really want to get into what fits my workflow. So I'm a DP for hire. I love vlogging and making YouTube video content. So my current daily driver is my Canon C100. Yes, I said it, my Canon C100 Mark I. I don't care what anybody says, this has been my favorite cam for 4 years now. This camera has actually probably been around, I think it came out probably 8 or 9 years ago. So, but it fits my need of everything that I want for my YouTube studio. So moving from my YouTube studio to my DP projects that I get hired on, or commercial projects that I get hired on to shoot, or even things that I have small short films or small scenes that I want to shoot, I'm ready to increase my output. So now I feel like I have projects that I can tackle more, that I might need ProRes, I might need RAW, the capabilities to shoot in these higher codecs, now that I have a machine that can fit there. So with so many cameras on the market that shoot 4K, and now that everybody's coming out with their own variation of what is RAW, you have K-RAW, you have Blackmagic RAW or B-RAW, all these different variations or companies specific type of codecs now that are very specific. You kind of see the trend moving to, okay, I have a camera, it shoots RAW, it shoots 4K, check, check, check. So without further ado, there is a camera that I've been looking at, it has caught my attention, and now I would like to introduce you to the Z Cam. This comes in as the base or entry level in the E2 series lineup. Z Cam has also released a full frame and a Super 35 version for higher end productions. The E2C provides 4K up to 30 frames per second. It has a standard 4.3 CMOS sensor coming in about 11.5 stops of dynamic range. So the E2C weighs about 1.47 pounds, and as you can see, it easily fits into my hand. Relatively speaking, it's no bigger or taller than this average Funko Pop. With its size, the E2C is versatile in unique filming situations, such as car rigging for interior and exterior scenes, and for unique overhead mounting configurations. On the back of the E2C, it comes with one HDMI out for external monitoring. The E2C also accepts Canon LP-E6 batteries for powering. And lastly, we have one USB-C port that enables shooting RAW and ProRes. As of right now, the most reliable SSD is going to be the Samsung T5. At the moment, I haven't had any issues or problems or concerns shooting RAW ProRes going into this. So right now, this is definitely one of the only SSDs that I can actually recommend. Simply put, this package comes in at $799. One of the only cameras on the market that can shoot RAW and ProRes for under $1,000. So, what are my pros and cons for this camera? As of right now, let's start with the cons. One of my cons for this camera is definitely the rolling shutter. I think the rolling shutter in this camera is very noticeable in a way that it is really bad. Unfortunately, it's probably one of the worst rolling shutters I've seen on a camera. Fortunately, ZCam has offered firmware updates to address the issue. As of right now, a new firmware update has been issued to counteract this problem, but as of right now, I'm gonna still mark that as a con. So a personal con for me would definitely have to be the Micro Four Thirds mount. I've never been a true Micro Four Thirds type shooter. I've always had Super 35 or full frame. So adjusting to that, or adjusting to the speed booster culture and having to gather and get those resources just to, fit my existing lenses that are EF mounts or full frame lenses or anything like that, that was a kind of nitpicky. So, but for the price, I'm willing to accept the Micro Four Thirds mounts. Probably my last con for this camera would be the NLE support, or your editing system support for this camera. As of right now, Z-Raw is not supported in Premiere, Final Cut, but however, you do receive a native software base from ZCam to actually work with your Z-Raw files. In that program, you can actually batch and transcode your files back down to either ProRes or H.265, which is a recognizable codec for Premiere. So right now, until Premiere kind of upgrades or Final Cut upgrades to understanding Z-Raw, even DaVinci Resolve is not recognizing Z-Raw at this moment, but as the community increases, I see this being updated. So, but as of right now, this is a con for me. So moving on to the pros. As I've already said it before, this is the first camera that I've seen under $1,000 where you can shoot ProRes and RAW. Another pro for me is this particular model, as I said, can shoot to a T5 SSD. If you don't shoot those routes natively on board the camera, you do have an SD card reader. I think one of the biggest things that I still enjoy is the fact that this camera does have non-limitation recording. What I mean by that is, no matter what kind of media that you're recording to, you don't have any type of timeouts in recording. So traditionally in DSLR cameras, and maybe a few mirrorless cameras, you can max out with either 5, 10 minutes or 30-minute increments of recording. You fortunately do get to shoot out your car without your camera pausing and recording or shutting down and recording. So that is definitely a plus. So who is this camera for? With this camera being under $1,000 and still able to shoot ProRes, able to shoot RAW, still has some legacy media for young filmmakers, I feel that this is a pure entry level into the ZCam family. So with a camera now under $1,000, shooting ProRes, shooting RAW, and then has 6 other cameras on this line that has a higher increase in codec, or a higher increase in frame rate, or a higher increase in frame size or sensor size or anything of the such, I believe that this camera is for that entry-level filmmaker who is just now transitioning from either an EOS OR or a DSLR into their first actual cinema camera without having to break the bank. I think this is a genius idea because this gives the opportunity for this filmmaker to explore in the ZCam family. And I think that's wonderful. This camera is for you. If you're willing to transition over to a cinema camera, if you're willing to commit to a new camera line and the potential of it growing to becoming the next Red company or becoming the next Blackmagic company, where that splash seemed to be very disruptive, and now these companies are a standard or a staple as far as inside of our film community. So I think if you're willing to put down $800 for a camera, I don't believe you're completely breaking the bank in terms of this other counterparts of being $1,400 or $1,600 or even $2,000 for the next prosumer level of a cinema camera. So with this camera gives you a taste of what's to come inside the Z Cam E2 series family. So with that being said, this is my review, guys. I want to give a special shout out to one of my friends, Rodney. He allowed me to actually borrow his Panasonic Micro Four Thirds lens to get a couple test shots before my speed booster got here. So I want to thank you personally. If you don't know Rodney, here's a link to his page. He does amazing graphic and motion graphic work. So if you like this video, guys, go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and subscribe, and please share the video, and I will catch you on the next time.